yes. Okay, the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development meeting has now commenced. It is September 1st at 4 p.m. This meeting is being held virtually due to COVID-19 to allow for social distancing and to protect the public health. As we continue our efforts in meeting remotely, we ask all commissioners and guests to mute yourselves until called upon to speak to avoid feedback and background noise. For those who have dialed in using the call-in number, to unmute to speak, dial *6 on your phone. Also, prior to speaking, please announce who you are to identify yourself. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We ask that you only use the chat function to request to speak or to announce you are leaving the meeting so we can track quorum. Also, to comply with state open meeting law, attendance and votes will be done by way of roll call using audio, not the chat function. So we'll do roll call. Michael Edmonds.
I am present.
Olga Flores.
She's absent. She had a doctor appointment today, so she's not going to attend.
Okay, Sharia Jimenez.
Present.
Jim Topol, I am here. Liz Wilson is absent. Jay Young.
Here.
Mindy Bernstein.
Present.
Lori Mazurbo.
Present.
Joanna Carr.
Present.
Ken Brianna Washington.
Present.
Ken Brianna, welcome.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, Maggie Amato Tejas.
Present.
Wendy Asher. Marianne Bierling. Mark Clark. And Vicky Cusino.
Here.
Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We barely meet quorum. Actually, we got one extra person here. Okay, good. And our ex officio members, Marcos Ismail. Here. Betty Villegas.
Here.
And Corin Manning.
Here.
And Liz Morales.
I am here.
Okay, so for the first item on the agenda is to review and adopt the July and the August meeting minutes. Those are posted on our website. Are there any comments? Mindy?
I missed half of both of those meetings. I would need to abstain from a vote on approving the minutes.
Okay. Any other comments or changes? Okay, well, without objection, the minutes are approved. So third agenda item is call to audience. This is a time when any member of the public may address the Commission on Equitable Housing and Development. Due to time constraints, the total time allocated for this is 15 minutes. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes each to speak. Due to open meeting law, commission members cannot discuss topics that are not on the agenda. Items brought up by the public may be considered as an agenda item for a future meeting. Does anybody like to speak? Yes, Kay Snow, you have the floor.
Hi, I just wanted to mention the link on the CEHD development to this meeting is broken.
Oh, the website link is broken?
Yeah, I just happened to spot it, but I think people that tried to join this from the public might have a hard time.
I can check on that.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. Any other comments? Okay, next agenda item is a subcommittee updates. We are going to start with the housing segregation. Jay.
Yes, thank you, Jim. We had a very rich conversation yesterday. We missed our meeting last week, but we're able to reschedule for yesterday. We basically, after spending a lot of time talking about a housing equity study and moving that forward to the full commission, we were kind of in the place of thinking about what to do next and how to move forward as a subcommittee. A number of topics came up that we kind of realized we needed to agendize to be able to talk about more specifically. But we talked about the Norte Sewer high transit corridor project that is under consideration, wanting to talk about the equity issues related to that, particularly related to housing. That went into a conversation about gentrification and displacement, wanting to dig into that a bit more, considering that's a main part of what this commission as a whole is supposed to be doing. We talked about highways and their impact on segregation and housing, wanting to review Gary Pivo's work about the Giplet and its relationship to gentrification and displacement as well. That led into Santa Rita Park again, discussing the upgrades to the park and the impacts on the homeless population. But again, realizing we needed to agendize Santa Rita Park because it was not on our agenda, and we were advised to not get into depth about that. What else? We talked about accessibility and particularly best practices around universal access, and potentially starting at our subcommittee level to make sure that we're fully accessible. Vicki was talking about the different levels of accessibility that can be achieved, and then kind of taking that outward to the full commission, and then maybe even outward to city departments and whatnot. So there was a lot that we discussed, a lot that we needed to agendize, and so all of that being said, really we are kind of thinking about what direction to go as a subcommittee now that the equity study, at least theoretically, is starting down the path to get momentum. So I believe that is basically what we did yesterday. Is there anybody else that was at the subcommittee meeting yesterday that would like to add anything that I may have missed? I see Mike and Vicki, Lori. Anything? There you go. That's what we did, Jim. Thanks.
Do you want to talk any more about this? Are we going to talk about it later? The housing equity study.
I can, if you like, or I don't know. What do you think?
I think it would be good to talk about what's happening. I don't know if anybody's here from the class.
Sure. So talking about the equity study, I believe that we have talked about this as a full commission, but there is a class at Arizona State University led by Professor Deirdre Pfeiffer, professor of planning there, and they are helping us as a committee and as a city to investigate what other cities have done regarding housing equity studies, to provide that kind of baseline of information that we've talked about needing as a commission and really as a city, in order to be able to understand where we are today regarding equity and housing equity in particular, so that we can then think about potential policies, processes, other things to address any deficiencies in equity that we see, and then to think about how we measure progress going forward. So the first class meeting was held that Jim, Ann, Allison, and I attended. That was the four, I think, from our group. So at the subcommittee, I was asked to share the MOU that really kind of describes what the students are doing, and the class syllabus, which I have yet to do, but we'll do that. And obviously, I'm happy to share that with the full commission as well. The last thing that I wanted to bring up, but I know that there are issues with quorum and open meeting laws. This certainly, at least in my opinion, does not need to be some sort of exclusive process. I am more than happy for other commission members to participate in this and meet with the students at the designated meeting times. But I know there are issues with quorum that luckily is out of my wheelhouse. So somebody from the city could weigh in on that. But anyway, that's basically, I think, where we are. Jim or Ann or anybody else that was there want to add anything?
Well, the only thing that really kind of struck me is, I mean, because it's a school class, they have to get it done this semester. And so it's going to happen the next 3 months. So it's going to move pretty quick. We're probably going to have 2 more meetings before something is produced. So, I think that's the speed that's happening compared to relative to how everything's been going is going to be very fast. So, but I was very encouraged by it. I thought it was a great meeting, and I'm really glad they decided to take it on. So we appreciate their support.
Yeah, I would echo that I think that class in general is really exciting to me, talking about equity and zoning, and just in general, really excited that the students are taking the class and then working with us on this project. Jay, your question about open meeting law, I now that there are 15 voting members on the commission, I think it would be unlikely you'd have a quorum if attend a meeting outside. So a quorum at this point is now 8 members. If you happen to hear of more than 8 that are interested in attending, we can send a public notice out just saying that this is, and it's we can do work around it, but I wouldn't worry too much about quorum there.
And just so everyone knows, the schedule for the class meetings that they are needing the commission to participate in is in the MOU. So if folks are interested in attending, that's where you would find the dates for the classes. So again, I will get that out to city staff to get to the full commission.
Great. Thank you. Housing First. Liz? Wilson's not here. Liz Morales, do you mind trying to field this?
I'm going to ask. I think I had to miss the last meeting because I don't have a memory, unless my memory as usual has I don't remember.
Mike, do you have some notes from yesterday's meeting?
I do, and I've
okay.
being the co-chair. But I'm wondering if I should let the other subcommittee go first, because I do have a motion to present.
Okay, we can adjust the agenda. There's no objection. Hearing none. So we'll skip down to affordable housing and then come back to Housing First. So Sharia.
Right. Yeah, I'll just go over briefly. We spent some time talking about the upcoming, which is now past, housing forum. I don't know, Jim, do you want to give updates on that and getting ready for comments for the QAP? Did you all get a chance to, I wasn't there, did you all get a chance to speak at the?
Yeah, so the Arizona State Housing Conference was 2 weeks ago up in Scottsdale. I think we had 5 or 6 commission members who were there. It was well attended. The last session of the forum was the feedback session on the QAP that ADOH had. I did send out a list to the affordable housing subcommittee on all of the items that were discussed that we thought would make Tucson more competitive. And Marianne Bierling, bless her soul, got up and went through them. So she, I think she did a good job. And the one thing I thought was really interesting, that ADOH is somewhat hesitant to change the QAP this year because they said it was going to be a 2-year QAP. They did make one change of significance that is going to help Tucson, though, and that is that they are not going to award for any specific set aside. They're not going to award 2 projects in the same county. So, for example, if there are 5 projects in a urban set aside, and the top 3 are in Phoenix, one's in Tucson, and then the 5th one is in Tucson, say, they're going to award the first one to the Phoenix project, and then they're going to go to the top one outside of Maricopa County, which would be in Tucson, award that, and then they're going to go back to the Phoenix project, and then back to the Tucson project, is my understanding. So it is going to help us get, at least we could be guaranteed that Tucson's going to get an award or 2, which is great. And that's really what we were pushing for. So that is a very, I think, smart way for ADOH to make sure that we get something down here. So they heard something that just didn't come directly from the commission.
Yeah, that was about it. And then I went through a list of items for zoning changes. And then we decided that we were going to have kind of get those synthesized and potentially get the city's consultant on board to look into that further. And I can't remember the consulting group's name. You were gonna Eco Northwest, was that who it was?
Yeah, we're gonna invite them to the next affordable housing subcommittee meeting to talk about zoning and kind of some of the work that they're proposing they could do. Also with that, one thing we learned last week is that the city of Flagstaff is putting out an RFP for a firm to do a full zoning code audit for looking at housing and also looking at sustainability together and how to incentivize those things and make it easier for those things in the code. So when we see that RFP out, I think it's something that could be helpful for us to take a look at.
And that was about it. We ran out of time. So next meeting, we're supposed to also dive into home ownership, affordable home ownership.
Yeah, we did talk about home ownership. The other thing we really want to try to do in the affordable housing group is try to make a little bit more progress on our short-term goals in terms of specific recommendations to mayor and council and things Tucson can do to get more affordable housing down here. We went through some of those suggestions, I think 2 meetings ago. There was questions that came back from this group, and we've been kicking it around. There's been more attention on the QAP, frankly, than the goals from Tucson. But it's my hope that this next meeting, we can refocus on trying to come up with 2 to 3 suggestions for the city of Tucson to implement to hopefully attract new projects here. The other thing that I would like to see happen is one of our goals was to set a kind of a milestone or a goal on how many new affordable housing units we're going to get built in Tucson over the next 5 years. I think it was. I don't remember if it was 5 years or 10 years. And so I want to try to get something down on paper with an actual goal. And so I've reached out to HCD to help us put together and development services to put together a list of known projects in the pipeline. So at least we kind of have a starting point on what we think is going to be happening. And then we can use that as a guideline for setting a goal. Does that make sense?
Is it possible to get data like maybe for the past 5 years? Is there a way to take because it's been kind of an off year, right? The past.
We can certainly, and we are compiling anything that the city or the county has invested money in. We can share, and anything we know we've heard is on the horizon. What we don't know is if folks have been able to use other funding sources that didn't go through us. It'll be incomplete, but it'll be a fairly decent picture.
One other piece of good news is the state tax credit awards came out this last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, and Tucson did receive an award for state tax credits. Brad Fisher with, I think he's with Starwood, they're out of Texas, received a $2 million award of state tax credits for a 4% bond deal that he wants to build off of Valencia and Tucson. And that's likely going to be around 200 units. So it's a nice size project. So any other comments or discussion on the Affordable Housing Subcommittee? Joe?
Yeah, real quick, if you're talking about setting a goal and looking at the projects that are in the pipeline and what's been done, are we talking about a prediction of what we think is going to happen? Or are we talking about setting a goal based on the needs of Tucson, how many or the affordable housing need?
My thought is we do a stretch goal. So we look at what is the baseline of what has been developed over the last, or is currently in the pipeline or has been developed over the last 5 years. And then we can use that as a baseline to say, okay, well, we want to see twice or 3 times that amount or whatever we think is appropriate to set a stretch goal going forward.
Gotcha. So it's really a goal relative to what's been done and increasing what's been done, not here's what we think we need and being relative to that.
Right. We don't want to set a goal of 1,000 units if we're building 500 units a year already. Then we're not, so understanding where we are right now is, I think, the important in terms of goal setting going forward.
Thanks. Just wanted to make sure I understood it. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no other discussion on that, we will go back to housing first. So, Michael.
All right. And I'm gonna probably ask for some assistance, or maybe let's see if I missed anything at the end of this, because Joe attended. Just real quick, Vicky, are you a member of this subcommittee? Or because I have a note here that says Mindy is a member, but I don't think you're a member. Is that correct, Mindy?
I am a member. I just didn't make the last 2 meetings.
Okay, all right. There was another person there, and maybe Joe, you can help me later. So the notes I have, I'm going to read the motion first and then go through some of what we covered in the meeting. And again, if I miss anything, Joe, let me know. So the motion is this. A request that the full commission hold special sessions or form a joint task force or subcommittee for the review of the City of Tucson zoning ordinances and a formal recommendation to mayor and council on the outcome of that review. We can come back to that at the end, because we did go over zoning. I believe Corin was there and gave a great presentation, and Laura Sharp, Corin Manning and Laura Sharp. Learned quite a few things, still got a lot of reading to do. Haven't gone over all of my notes yet. We covered, we learned somewhat of how districts are drawn a little bit, and some of the zoning and different zones, and some of the flexibility and inflexibility of zoning options. Jim will probably know a lot more about this than I. Some of these wasn't necessarily notes from the meeting or report, but I have a lot of questions here from Liz that I'm not sure that I should pose at this, but there was some question about are the maps accessible to the public, the maps we were looking at in the subcommittee meeting, and how we could apply the tool towards development. And a lot of the information we received was really great. It was wonderful. Made a lot of notes. We learned about the housing opportunity map, and that gave us a lot of detail as to in different ways where there's available land, what it's zoned towards, then the flavor of the areas that those land parcels are in, so to speak. So is it a lot of industrial around it or not, or is there a lot of residential around it or not? What kind of residential, that kind of thing. At this point, I'm going to just say that was those are the headlines there. Ask Joe if he wanted to weigh in. Vicky, if you attended, if you wanted to weigh in. Also, since Corin is here, if you don't mind, Corin, did I leave anything out from the subcommittee that I should have shared?
No, that sounds good.
Okay, I'm not quite sure I understand what the motion is that was asked.
Right, that's why I wanted to come back to it.
Okay.
So let me get it back on the screen here. So the motion is this, and I'm reading it as written. A request that the full commission hold special sessions or form a joint task force subcommittee for the review of the City of Tucson zoning ordinances, and a formal recommendation to mayor and council on the outcome of that review. So we have a task force or a subcommittee regarding zoning ordinances that we hold a special session as a full commission on that. Then part B would be to submit at some point after that a formal recommendation to mayor and council based on the outcome of that review.
Okay.
So, you want me to try to clarify it even further?
I think I understand what you said, but I'm trying to understand what is the desired outcome?
Well, like I said, there was a lot of great information that came out of the presentations. And I believe we feel that the full commission would really benefit on being aware of how things are set up, so we can understand what the challenges are, what the difficulties are, where there are fences or walls, things we cannot do and cannot make recommendations toward.
For zoning.
Right.
Okay. So, Mindy?
I'm imagining in that I have been curious and wanting to know city and county-owned properties that are vacant. For me, my curiosity lends itself to building programs on those properties. So I'm a little confused about, I support what you said, Michael, makes perfect sense about getting a joint task force, because it is finding out about what the zoning is for those properties as the beginning step of looking at new housing programs on those properties. Why would we, I'm trying to get my brain to work here. What would be the end game thought about knowing what properties are zoned what. That's all I can say.
Real quick, I just realized I violated Robert's rules here. I think as a point of order, we're supposed to get a second, and then once we have a second, we could discuss it. Is that correct? Okay, so is there somebody who wants to second this, and we'll jump back into the discussion?
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Shay. Okay, so Mike, did you understand Mindy's question?
Well, I believe she, if I understood you, Mindy, she, as I, would like to learn more about why, get a quick example. Why can't this parcel be used? Well, it's zoned to this. Well, why can't we change that zoning? What are the holdups? What are the problems?
Okay. Shay?
Well, this is a topic that I also think needs further exploration. So I actually really do like the motion to form a separate subcommittee because it is very complex. And I think that there might be a lot of people interested in this topic. But I guess what I'm wondering, it was something we're discussing also in affordable housing subcommittee. So it feels like we're overlapping. So I'm just not sure what's the most efficient way to do this process, basically. And I feel like what we're really trying to figure out right now is what would be the process moving forward. And then like you're saying, Jim, which I think is a great point. Like I think the end goal for me, even in the last presentation when I started talking about zoning, I would love to tie each item to equity. Like we need to tie it back to equity. I mean, that's what we're doing. That's what we're here for. And so to me, any item we're looking at, it's got to be furthering our goals, whether it's increasing the amount of housing units or it's trying to have a more equitable approach by reducing, income and racial segregation, or, I think if we tie this group back, if we could tie it back to equity issues or our clear tangible goals that we've already outlined, I think then there would be great purpose in it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It seems so. One of the suggestions coming out of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee was to allow for a flexible zoning on affordable housing projects. And so it sounds to me like there's a lot of overlap between these two topics. And I guess as a point of clarification, we have currently 3 subcommittees. So is what you're proposing, Mike, to establish a 4th subcommittee where we would have to have either members on multiple subcommittees or to reallocate people from existing subcommittees to this new one?
The proposition is to either form a joint task force or a subcommittee. And, I'm inclined to lean towards task force if you're thinking there's overlap. That seems to me to be the most logical way to approach this, unless somebody else has a much better idea.
So are there issues with open meeting laws on doing that? If we have a task force, we just have to have fewer than 8 members, correct? Okay. Yeah, I mean, it sounds, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, having attended some of the affordable housing subcommittee meetings and the one yesterday, I think the issue that Shay and Joanna and Chad are speaking to is the crux of the issue. When we started looking at the maps, part of that is what's zoned for what. So from the Housing First standpoint, the concern is, okay, how do we expand the Housing First programs, and what kind of zoning do we need to that? Are there zoning impediments to expanding Housing First? What are those? But we know that the conversations around zoning for affordable housing are already happening in the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, and that subcommittee is where a lot of the expertise on zoning lies in this group. So basically the idea was, how do we get those 2 ideas and maybe groups of people together? Would you need to block out portions of a full CHD meeting, or is it more effective to do it as, like Mike says, a task force, a subcommittee, something else like that, just to give the rest of the background for it. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to just ask, before we put this to vote, if there are volunteers and who would like to volunteer for this special task force. Joanna, did you have a question or comment?
I was going to say exactly what Shay and Joe mentioned, just recognizing the overlap. But I would be happy to help with that task force and volunteer.
All right, thanks. Mindy?
So to have a task force, you cannot have more than 8 commission members, is that correct?
Correct.
I was thinking of another way to approach what Michael is proposing, and that I like the idea of taking a chunk out of our monthly meetings to discuss this as a whole group. I think because we have our subcommittees and we're making small reporting. However, I feel that if we had time to really look at those issues as the whole commission, we might have some benefit. That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, Jay?
I was just going to ask if could it make sense to have this go through one of our already formed subcommittees, and those of us that are able and willing to attend that particular subcommittee meeting, as opposed to having a task force where essentially you're having a full commission meeting, right? If you have to have quorum of 8 people, it's essentially a full commission meeting anyway. So either have a full commission meeting, another full commission meeting, just call it that, because you're going to have quorum, or have it run through a subcommittee and just whoever can show up.
Actually, I think it's the opposite. We cannot have quorum. It has to be fewer than 8 people.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Could you still run it through a subcommittee though that's already formed, right? Affordable housing, as opposed to doing something totally new?
Right. Yeah. Shay?
Yeah, I was just gonna second some version of Jay and Mindy's idea. I am struggling to meet just these two and to make all these meetings work as it is. So I agree. I think we should try to consolidate somehow.
Liz?
Just say regarding the quorum issue, I just think if you're going to have a special, for instance, a special topic, whether it's on the full commission meeting or in one subcommittee, people can attend and not have to be concerned. And I do think it is having an additional task force could result in low attendance. So if it's a topic that everyone's interested in, I think, make that at a time where people can attend.
Okay. So, but is my understanding even the subcommittees cannot have more than eight voting members? Is that accurate?
I'm gonna defer to Ann on that question, or Ernesto.
Sorry, what you just said, a subcommittee cannot have more than 8 voting members. That is accurate, because that would put you at a quorum for the full commission.
Yeah. So we can have up to 7 voting members in a subcommittee meeting. Jay?
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I'm a little bit lost here. So going back to even before how we do this. So this group, whatever it turns out to be, would listen to other people talk about zoning in Tucson, and then we would kind of figure out what the equity issues with that are. And I guess I'm just going back to it because zoning is such a complicated technical issue. I'm just wondering, I think it's critically important, and I appreciate the sentiment to tie it back to equity, because if we're not doing that, we're not really doing our job. But I guess I'm just struggling a little bit going back to like, what exactly would this subcommittee do? I know we were talking about that, but it's still, I guess, not clear in my mind exactly how this would work and what we would be doing.
Shay, you want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the why I was interested, part of what I was interested in joining this committee was to make policy recommendations. So to me, if we can make policy recommendations that are very tangible, that we can get people behind, again, that tie back to equity, we make the recommendation to mayor and council, we can potentially move the needle on some of these things. So I feel like it could be very worthwhile. It is a beast of a topic, I agree. And that's why maybe it is something that if it lands up being in the affordable housing subcommittee or wherever this topic ends up living, it might need to be several meetings, just several, standing meetings. We give it its proper time and kind of just walk through the different issues and perspectives, because it's going to change depending on how you're looking at it. If you're looking at it like Mike was saying, from the housing first lens, versus if you're looking at it from the lens of an affordable housing developer, or you're looking at it from the lens of, neighbor to neighbor. I mean, it's just going to really, it's a huge topic. And I think it's worth trying to tackle, so we can, again, just have solid, tangible policy recommendations.
Yeah, thanks, Shay. That makes total sense. Appreciate that explanation.
Mindy?
I think I'm hearing great energy around this, and we could do it and see what happens. It might be a short-term task force. It may be a longer term. And if people on the task force, of which I'm willing to be a member, sometimes if there's energy and thoughts behind things, let's explore it, and kind of evaluate as we go. That's all I had to say. Thanks.
So Shay, I do think it's important, because you have been talking about this for some time. I do think and you've probably got more experience than anybody else in the commission on zoning, besides maybe Corin.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
Shay definitely has more.
Maybe with dealing with development services. The planning is a whole other animal.
But I guess I'd like to just see as a show of hands. I mean, if we had a special task force to address this, who would want to participate? And granted, we only have 9 members. So Jay, Ed, Michael, Shay, Mindy, Joanna. Okay, well, that's a good portion. And there's, we've got 6 people who are not here. So I guess the open question then is, do we want to try to address this in the commission, in a subcommittee meeting, through either affordable housing or housing first, or do we want to break this out as a separate special task force? Do we want
Yeah.
to?
I just naturally still think task force, because I'm thinking of a task force overlapping these subcommittees. But again, if that's not the best idea, tell me if it's not the best idea.
Mindy?
I think it's a great idea. And if more than 8 commission individuals show up, someone can volunteer to leave, so that we are not violating any of if we have 6 here, people who are not, So I think there's a way around not having more than 8.
I agree. Shay?
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, I would personally prefer to handle it in the subcommittee, or if it is going to be separate, then I would have to give up one of my. I would feel like I would not want to attend the affordable housing subcommittee just to focus on this, for me personally. Which, as long as I think we have some flexibility shuffling, I'm not sure if anyone else is in that position, but that would be my caveat with having it as a separate task force for myself personally.
So how long do you guys think this task force would need to run? Are we talking about a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year? What are you guys thinking?
Help me, Shay, because I'm on a learning curve here.
honestly, I just when I started to scratch the surface on the issues, I feel like you could spend at least a year. I mean, there's just so much ground to cover. And then when you think about then how you distill everything again just into very tangible, achievable policy recommendations, I I feel like it's the whole thing could take some time. And I absolutely think we would need the support of what we've already talked about, with corn, either having Northwest or, it would definitely take staff support from both the city and I don't know, potentially other consultants. I'm not really sure. But as a point of comparison, when I've looked at other people who have gone through, like I was just looking at, it was the city of Buffalo, New York, when they went through their zoning update and they moved to a form-based code. It took them 7 years, 7 years to do that in a public process. So it is kind of a beast, and I'm not saying that it's gonna, I mean, I don't know, and we'd have to maybe just be realistic about what our goals would be and kind of dial it in, but it is a topic to me that takes a lot of time to go through.
Well, and I think again, we don't need to necessarily have all the answers and have it really dialed into the, to the exact details of whatever changes are being proposed. I think what the group can do is identify barriers and limitations and then put it back to staff to come forward with recommendations on the best ways to address that. So if it's more of a high level, this is what we think is causing the issues and holding us back. It's not, we don't have to necessarily develop the entire solution. Jay?
Yeah, I agree with you, Jim. And I was just, what popped into my head was like, 4 months, 6 months max. I mean, it's September, it's who knows how many people will meet in December. But, I think, taking it as a small part initially and then regrouping and seeing, okay, do we need to invest another 2 years in this because it's so important and so big? Or like you said, Jim, after a few months, it's like, okay, we know what we need to recommend. We don't need to know everything. So I would recommend a short time period and then regroup. So maybe 4 months.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we say 3 to 4 months, and then at the end of that, if we come out of it and say we're not close, we need more time, and we still feel that this is something that's important, maybe then we look at creating a fourth subcommittee and reorganizing our subcommittees so that we give it the attention it deserves. But I agree. I think if we go in and we say, okay, let's try to do it for 3 to 4 months, 3 to 4 meetings to to identify what we feel are the barriers and the high level things that can change, and then use that as a way to give a recommendation to the city to basically identify what they think is a solution. Because there's probably, it's all said and done, there's going to be attorneys involved. It gets very complicated, and it is going to take some financial resources to actually make a change.
Then I will restate my opinion at this point then. Based on the conversation I've heard from my colleagues, how about this? I am for it being in a subcommittee, being handled by a subcommittee. And keeping in mind that Liz Wilson, the chair of the Housing First Subcommittee, was the one who wrote this and wanted me to present it on her behalf. I would say that it sounds like if Shay's subcommittee is willing to have it under them, sounds good to me.
Shay, how do you feel about that?
I think that's great. I think it's a great way to move it forward. And like you're saying, Jim, like see how it goes and how much time we really need to dedicate towards it, and then regroup. And if we need to form a separate task force or subcommittee at that point, then let's do that. But I'm kind of hesitant to create a whole new separate and entity without knowing where it's headed and how it's going.
Okay, so we still have a motion on the table, and unless Michael, you want to withdraw the motion.
I don't think I need to withdraw the motion because I had a task force or subcommittee in my statement, so it should be fine.
Okay, so do you want me to do the question then?
Yeah, unless anyone else has any more any other questions, or we may have one more, Jim. May have another question.
I was just gonna say maybe we just say we're gonna or change the motion to be that we're gonna move this topic to the Affordable Housing Subcommittee and make sure we have, I don't know, at least 30 minutes every meeting for the next 4 to 6, I don't know, how many minutes do you think we need for each meeting? I mean, at least 30, right? For the next 4 meetings?
Right. So, okay, so I think, correct me, Ernesto, if I'm wrong here, but so do we need to vote this down at this time? And then
that sounded like a friendly amendment, as it's
Right.
much more in line with Mike's. It's very similar to Mike's, just with a slight tweak. So
Okay.
sounds like a friendly amendment to me.
Okay, so it's an amended motion to review the zoning ordinances and zoning code for potential changes as part of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee over the next 4 months. Is that accurate?
I think Mike asked that it go to the Housing First subcommittee.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to rewrite this as we speak, just so I can restate it.
You want it to be in the Housing First or the Affordable Housing?
Shays.
The Affordable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mindy, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. Michael, when you first brought this up as a possible subcommittee, or forgot the other word, were you, I thought I heard you speak about land that's vacant.
It was more of a comment, really. Yeah.
Okay. That's what piqued my biggest interest, is
Yeah.
looking at the vacant land and how and where it's zone, what the zoning is for those parcels. Because my secret agenda is to build new programs on them. So.
Okay, so Michael, do you want to restate the motion as amended? And then we'll put this to question.
Yeah. Let me see. Hopefully this will make sense now. All right, let me try this. I'm putting forward a request that the full commission allow the Affordable Housing Subcommittee review City of Tucson zoning ordinances for a later formal recommendation to mayor and council based on the outcome of that review.
Sounds good. And Shay, do you accept that amendment?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further comments before we put it to question? Okay, Michael.
Aye.
Shay.
Aye.
Jay.
Aye.
Mindy.
Aye.
Lori.
Aye.
Joanna.
Hi.
Kinbrey. Was that an aye?
Yeah.
Okay. Maggie.
Aye.
Vicky.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you, Michael.
Jim, can I jump in for a moment?
Yep.
Before we move over to Betty's item, and with Betty's indulgence, I just wanted to bring something up for the subcommittees. And it's a nice segue about quorums. There's been a little bit of confusion about quorum, what constitutes quorum for the subcommittees, now that we have ex officio members as full voting members. So we'd like to ask, staff would like to ask the subcommittees at their next meetings to establish what commission members will be sitting on the subcommittees. We're expecting you to have more than 3 now, and to give us a list of the new members on the subcommittees, and we'll put it on the agenda for a full vote at the next commission meeting.
Okay. So, Jay?
I guess I'm a little confused by that. We had an issue with quorum this past week because Vicky joined our subcommittee, which was
correct,
obviously, but I didn't know, and we were just confused about quorum. So
right.
as the subcommittee chairs are supposed to do what now?
No, again, like your committee, as you added Vicky, but we haven't, the commission has not voted formally on the new members of the subcommittee. So just provide a list of who the new members are, the full members of the subcommittees, and we'll put it, I'll put an agenda for the next meeting, and commission can vote on it, just to formalize it.
Ernesto, can you do me a favor?
Yes, sir.
You email the new members and ask them which subcommittee they would prefer to be on.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jay.
You can be on more than one if you'd like. Just clarification there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the subcommittees? Okay, agenda item number 5, discussion on home ownership and why home ownership still matters. Betty has graciously offered to help us through this topic.
I don't think I had a choice. Right, Jim?
She was volunteered.
And Maggie and I talked about this, and so we're actually jointly gonna jump in. So, but I think most of you were on the call at the last meeting when I talked about the importance of home ownership and how I felt that the committee was not addressing home ownership, that really the full conversation was on rental, and understood, where we have a shortage in rentals, but we also have a shortage in home ownership. And I think that it's important for us to address, the reasons, as well as for rental, as well as for home ownership, and to just kind of bring it back full circle to say that home ownership is still important. It's important to families. Maggie and I were talking earlier, and I said, let's do this little, what do we call it, Maggie? Just a little exercise.
Oh,
How many of you grew up in a home ownership environment? How many of you grew up in rental housing? So most of us grew up in homes that our parents owned, right? Those of us that grew up in rental, how many times did you move? A lot, probably. You changed schools a lot. Yeah. So those are some of the reasons why home ownership is important. It really stabilizes not only families, but children. And right now, with the trauma that we've all faced during the pandemic, having a stable place to live is even more important, I believe. So, some of the reasons why homeownership is important is because it's really the only way that most of us can build wealth. We lost a lot of wealth during the mortgage crisis, but during the pandemic, guess what? Most of us gained it back, right? We've been, the cost of housing has gone up so much, so it's really a benefit to all of us that own homes, but those of us that don't own homes and are trying to buy homes for the first time, you know, that we're in a crisis, they're in a crisis. And so it's up to us to try to find and work on policies and work on programming that can help first-time home buyers. This is something that, you know, I spent my entire career focused on until 2 years ago when I came to public housing. But you know, my heart is still with, you know, trying to get people into housing. Even here, you know, I have a Section 8 person that has really can't, you know, is going to have to pay full rent because they work and they make too much money. And we're counseling them and letting them know that, you know, there may be some homeownership opportunities out there. I think it's important for us to also know that there are a lot of new opportunities for first-time homebuyers coming around the corner. Just today, I was at a meeting at Chase Bank. Maggie and I were there together. We were invited by Chase Bank as they introduced a new program where they are gifting $5,000. It's not a lien. It's not anything. They can use this $5,000 for down payment, for closing costs, to buy down the interest rate. They can use it in any way they want because it's going to be on the mortgage document. It's going to show as a lender credit. It's not going to be a lien, and it can be layered with a lot of other down payment funding. So, you know, though that, and then I get back and I got an email from someone that sent me an email about Bank of America and how they're introducing this new program. And right now it's in pilot, not here in Tucson, but you know, they're gonna see if it works out and bring it here. So that tells me, and I know that we've been hearing a lot from the federal side that homeownership is important, and even the White House is looking at a program for a national down payment program. I read earlier about the possibility of a $15,000 credit for first-time home buyers. And this is important, but there's also caveats, you know, about how do you make sure that the people that are getting these funds really do need the funds. We have to do a better job than we have in the past with targeting. So, you know, there's a lot for us to learn about homeownership. And I think that there's a real benefit to our community when you do focus on it. And we need to really find solutions. Just as we're looking at rental, we also need to get solutions for home ownership, for single family home ownership, or maybe it's townhouses, you know, it's higher density home ownership, it's co-op home ownership, whatever it may be. You know, it's important, and we can't just put all our eggs in one rental, you know, in just the rental and multifamily, because we're doing a disservice to our community when we do that. So one of the things I did is I went back to the Joint Center for Housing Studies report on the state of housing for 2022. And they have broken all the way down to Tucson's level about what it takes to purchase a home. And the median price of a home as of April of 2022, which was at that time, the median price of the home was $94,108. And let me rephrase that. The median home price was $342,241, and the estimated mortgage payment was $2,431 for that price. But really, what you needed to qualify for that was $94,108. That's the median income that you would need to make buy a medium home priced home. And we know that that's not a reality for our wages here in Tucson. So what do? We have to find ways of subsidizing home ownership for first-time home buyers. And the way to do that is to, I know we just talked about another subcommittee, but I really think, again, with the affordable housing subcommittee, that we do need to break it into rental and home ownership, because in my opinion, from listening and sitting in on these meetings, we have a lot of really great experience with multifamily and low-income housing tax credits and rental. And there's a few of us that are still very passionate about home ownership. And so on the Affordable Housing Commission. So I would recommend that that we also have a committee on home ownership, so that we can really focus on it, because the majority of our time, we've been on here for an hour and almost 10 minutes, and it's all been about rental and home and equity, of course, which is important for both. But we need to spend some time on this subject. Besides building wealth, we put down some other benefits of home ownership, housing stability, stabilizing communities, neighborhoods, and families. Kids do better in school. Housing, stable, safe, decent housing is needed, in order for all of us to stay healthy, be healthy, and stay healthy. I think about the isolation that took place during the pandemic, and I think about kids that lived in rental housing versus a stable home-owned house. And I think about, how many of our kids were displaced due to evictions, and those that at least had their stable home, the majority of them were not displaced, so there's disparities. There's disparities there as well. So it's also an economic development tool. It creates jobs in the construction and housing industry, and it injects a lot of money into the community. So the cons of home ownership, of course, are it's expensive. The prices have gone up, inventory is low, and the process to build for developers is long, complicated, and expensive. And we understand that. And so we need to find ways, we need to find solutions, just as we are for rental and getting more projects for low-income housing tax credits. We need to do the same for single-family housing and home ownership. So I know we talk about our goal is to make recommendations to the city. So, some of the recommendations, just off the top of our head, we talked about incentivizing developers to build affordable units by improving the building permitting process. We used to have the city had a policy at one time where any developer that was going to build houses, 10% of it had to be affordable. Why can't we go back to that? But let's make it 20, and that ended during the recession. It just kind of went away because there was nothing happening during the mortgage crisis. But, I remember when it was very active. We had the general obligation bond program that provided a lot of housing projects, single family home ownership projects, as well as rental projects. So that's another recommendation to go back to, which we've talked about before. And then, supporting the down payment programs and really making sure that, you know, when we talk about home ownership, when we talk about housing, it's not just the bricks and mortar. It really isn't. When I was in housing, when I was at the county, we did a lot of prevention, a lot of education, a lot of just trying to, it was holistic, you know, we did healthy housing, healthy communities, you know, we talked about health impact assessments on development. You know, those are things that maybe we can take a look at again. You know, we kind of, I feel that we have to reset, you know, we have to do a reset on what was working before and what didn't work, you know, and what new tools do we have now? You know, a great tool that we have that not only provides safe, decent, affordable housing, but it also combats gentrification is the land trust model. We have a great example of a great community land trust model, and there's a big difference between a land trust model and a community land trust model. The community land trust model has a stewardship component that is very important, especially for first-time home buyers. And I believe that even in our down payment programs at the county and the city, you know, we were always stewards of the people that were being that were going through the housing counseling. You know, we wanted them to know that they could always come back when they had problems making their payment, or they had a major repair that had to be done, because we could help them find the resources if they didn't have the funding. So I don't want to take the full 20 minutes. I don't know where I'm at now, but I'll stop there. It's an ongoing conversation that I can talk about for hours and hours. But I'll go ahead, and Maggie, if I missed anything that you want to add, please go ahead. And if anyone has questions after that.
Just to add that we do have quite a few very experienced HUD-approved housing counseling agencies. And we have, you know, now they're required to have HUD-certified housing counselors, and they really do make a huge difference, you know, when we're talking about homeownership. And I just remember back in the day during the housing crisis, how all of the agencies, we were so focused on pre-purchase, and, you know, rates were not, you know, they're probably comparable to the rates right now, or even higher back in 2008 and 9. And yet we had a lot of momentum going. Prices, of course, were a little bit more affordable until they started going a little crazy. But definitely, you know, I feel like we have some great tools in our community that, what we do as a housing counseling agency is we want to make sure that we don't, create, failure, that we don't create any kind of a system that, places people in homes that they can't afford. And so that's like really, really important. But I do believe, and I saw a comment by Megan that, we need to, provide money for construction of affordable housing. We need to, I think, incentivize that for sure. And in the same way that we kind of have a LIHTC project, we have, we have general obligation bonds. We also used to have back in the day with a thing called mortgage revenue bonds. Not that I work at the land trust, but I really believe in the community land trust model over many, many years. And in the beginning, I actually had my doubts that it would work, and I have to tell you that it does work. We've been able to keep all of the subsidies that made these homes affordable. We're keeping them all, and we're growing it. And these homes are actually, becoming more affordable over time because of the way that the program works, is that you actually keep a lot of the, in the increase in value. 75% of it stays with the home after each progressive resale. And I like that model. I think that especially in times when we don't have a lot of money for down payment, and it's dwindling and it's been reduced, that we start stewarding those public subsidies, private subsidies, any subsidy we get to make affordable home ownership happen. We know, why are we giving it away? We should think about, reusing and recycling that. Just because I believe in home ownership and the creation of wealth and this creation of net worth and what that actually allows people to do down the line. So I'll shut up too.
Okay, so we got a couple of questions or comments. Joanna, I think you're first.
Yeah, I just want to say I really appreciate this conversation, and thank you, Betty, for raising it. I think it's also really important to look at this on the macro level and how home ownership fits into the economic piece of the housing landscape. Because when people get stuck in rental, as they are now, we know that there's so many millennials that are not able to obtain home ownership as much as the generations above. That really contributes to the supply and the demand issue. And so when we look at the affordable housing crisis and the factors that are affecting that block of people not able to have the mobility is needed to move to home ownership is really impacting that. And so certainly better all of the, the individual benefits of home ownership that you described was so important, but then it's also just really important to just bear in mind that entire housing spectrum. And I think we often lose track of this in our field because so many of us have worked and are working and are focused on our most vulnerable clients who are experiencing literal homelessness, where home ownership is so far away in their personal journey. But we have to remember how they are impacted by this block of home ownership. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I agree that it's a really important conversation we need to be including.
Yeah, I echo what Joanna just said. It's critically important to think about home ownership and have it be part of the conversation. And thanks to Betty and Maggie for bringing that up. From a fair housing perspective, it's critically important. I mean, the racial wealth gap in this country is still tremendous, and so much of that has to do with home ownership. White people in this country, 70% own their homes. For African Americans, the home ownership rate is lower than it was before the passage of the Fair Housing Act. The racist housing policy in this country, as many of you have heard me talk about, perpetuated that and made that the reality that we live today. And we've really done very little to close that gap. And, whether we like it or not, the reality in this country is home ownership is the way people build wealth. I mean, very few people are able to really build any lasting generational wealth without home ownership. I would love to see it be different than that. I think we need to move away from that, but that's not our reality. And we certainly need to work within that. It's also a responsibility of both the city and the county to affirmatively further fair housing. We still have segregated housing patterns. A lot of that has to do with home ownership. So as we look more at home ownership and bolster that, as both Betty and Maggie are talking about, we really need to look at who those programs are serving. The National Fair Housing Alliance, for instance, has an initiative called Keys Unlock Dreams, which is all about bolstering homeownership rates for people of color in this country. And they have a goal of creating 3 million new homeowners that are Black and Latino in this country. So anyway, from a fair housing perspective, I fully support the homeownership piece, and just wanted to say thank you, and it's definitely something I think that we should support. So thank you.
Jason.
Sure. Thanks so much, Jim. I appreciate this conversation a lot and wanted to sort of seize the opportunity also to update the commission on maximum purchase prices with the Home Investment Partnership Program. So folks may remember back in April, we shared some information with everyone, letting you know that we had submitted special documentation to HUD that would allow an increase to the maximum price that a home could be purchased for in Pima County using home funds. So primarily down payment assistance funding that's provided to low-income homeowners. And so at the time we saw a pretty marked increase, and also let folks know that we were submitting a second request to again increase those figures effective July 1. And so a few weeks ago, we received confirmation that that second request was also approved. And we published new home ownership limits, which increase the amount, the purchase price of a new home by about $25,000 over what had been approved in April, and also increases the eligible amount for home resale by about $3,000. So not as much of an increase in resale, but in resale is where we saw the largest increase in back in April. So it's not too surprising. And so, that's allowing us to try to keep up with the market in terms of the opportunities for low-income home buyers, knowing, of course, that these limit increases benefit home buyers, but also mean there's much more mortgage to be had, right? And so folks are still absolutely being priced out of a market, but this is kind of the best programs can do to keep up. So that information has all been posted and shared with all of our down payment assistance agencies, the housing counseling agencies that Betty and Maggie were mentioning earlier. And I also want to give tremendous thanks and kudos to Marcos and the team over at the county who really corralled that data. We kind of have the joy of being the folks that submit it to HUD and share it with you, but the true work happened with the county and some of their partners. So thank you so very much.
Very cool. Joe?
Yeah, I kind of come at this from look at some of these issues through a different lens. A couple of the people that I really follow when I'm looking at housing policy and how we handle things are former United Nations special rapporteurs for adequate housing. And one of the United Nations principles of adequate housing is this thing called security of tenure. And this is a huge issue because in America, housing is important in that wealth perspective, sure, but like Betty's speaking to, renters don't have any stability. There's zero security of tenure. We fail on that across the board, protecting tenants. And home ownership is the only way to get stability. I admit, sometimes I argue against myself here because I bought a house 5 years ago for that exact reason. I got tired of somebody selling out from under what I was renting. The only way to have this stability is to own a home. And I think if you want to talk about increasing ownership or control of housing in communities, that's great. And we also want to pair that with a conversation that we keep bringing up and hasn't really happened here in this commission or any subcommittee, and that is tenant protection. So increasing security of tenure is good. I think we should do that for renters and be looking at community control and home ownership. When you're talking about, I wanted to throw this in too. One of the things we talked about at the housing segregation subcommittee yesterday was an article that had been in the New York Times. It's about a neighborhood in Washington, D.C. and Anacostia, and it's about the redevelopment and fighting displacement, gentrification, increasing stability there. One of the things that they were doing is having community land trusts help facilitate housing co-ops, actually. We're talking about funding for a lot of things. I think that's something that I don't know if any of our CLTs are interested in that or have looked into that, but that's something that's on my radar too. Finally, with regards to the wealth building part of it, I think there was a book that came out a couple of years ago called The Asset Economy. Lisa Adkins, Melinda Cooper, Martin Cummings, sociologists, economists, and it kind of detailed how we've had a shift from a labor-based economy where people can really get ahead with labor, but as labor unions have lost power, that we've shifted to an asset economy. And at least for the white middle class, over the last 100 years of American housing policy, so much of that asset wealth has been in housing. And now we're seeing the hyper-commodification that the UN rapporteurs describe. Raquel Rolnick and Leilani Farha are the two most recent ones. And they describe this hyper-commodification and financialization of housing that is really causing problems. And the other thing that leads to, I think, is something that I know Liz Morales is going to talk about housing supply committee at state level later. If people's wealth all gets tied up in housing and you can't make a decent wage, people just reactionarily want to protect that wealth and housing. This is leading to NIMBYism, which is a big conversation in that housing supply group. And I think it's something we're aware of here, a lot of us, and that's really problematic. So I'm not going to argue against homeownership, but when I look at my priorities, I'm really interested in community control of housing that can't be, or is at least harder to commodify and financialize. And it's something that's harder for somebody to come in and buy up that housing, raise the rents, evict people, induce less stability. So those efforts under community controlled housing, whether it be public housing, community land trusts, or co-ops, I think are really interesting and worth taking up in this group. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. So first of all, I appreciate Betty and Maggie, you guys pushing me to get this on the agenda. I agree with everything you said. We've been talking about putting this also on the agenda of the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, and a couple of thoughts come to mind. First of all, I want to make sure that that our discussions are in terms of what recommendations do we think we need to make to the city to help incentivize, encourage people to do these types of projects here. And so the first thing that comes to mind is I want to make sure this gets the time it needs. And I'd like to suggest that the Affordable Housing Subcommittee, instead of being a 90-minute meeting, becomes a 2-hour meeting, because we're talking about zoning, we're going to be talking about home ownership, and we've got a couple other things on the slate. I want to make sure we get enough time in that subcommittee to get through these items. The other thing that coincidentally, I received an RFP 2 days ago from the Foundation for Senior Living, and they are doing 3 projects: a 16-unit project in Wickenburg, a 12-unit project in where is this? Someplace else in the state. I'm not finding where the location is. And then a 11-unit project in Mesa. All they're townhome style, for purchase affordable housing projects. Steve Hastings, who is the president of the real estate division of the Foundation for Senior Living, told me about these, and I asked him if he would be willing to meet with us and probably in the Affordable Housing Subcommittee to talk about how he's making these projects a reality, and because he's doing it, and to understand what are things as a city that we can do to get more of them here. Is that something that you guys would like me to pursue with him?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he told me he is spending the next 3 weeks in Washington with his grandson. So it's probably going to be the October meeting, but we'll get him on the agenda. So I think that was a really good conversation. Are there any other thoughts or points before we move to the next agenda item? Okay, thank you, Betty and Maggie. Okay, so the next agenda item is the letter we would like to send to mayor and council in support of the source of income ordinance that is being proposed. I emailed this letter to everyone on the commission. I will go ahead and share my screen so you can see it. Okay, does everybody see this? Is that a yes? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So I don't know that I need to necessarily read it. It's pretty self-explanatory. So I guess before
Jim, I'm sorry.
yeah.
I would suggest you do read it to have it on the record.
Okay.
Have it on the audio record. Thank you.
Got it. Okay. So I guess I'd like to make a motion that we send this letter to mayor and council, which reads as follows. So the subject is the Commission of Equitable Housing and Development perspective on the source of income ordinance. The Commission on Equitable Housing Development reviewed the source of income ordinance provided by HCD in our commission meeting on August 4th, 2022. If implemented, Tucson will be the first city in the state of Arizona to adopt such an ordinance. Nationally, there are 21 states and many cities which have successfully adopted similar legislation. CEHD recognizes that housing options for persons with housing assistance programs are limited. Many Tucson landlords do not accept vouchers or other government assistance without regard to the applicant meeting other screening criteria. There are currently approximately 380 individuals with housing vouchers who are unable to find a home or apartment to rent. CEHD believes this is a step towards improving housing equity in Tucson and recommends that mayor and council support adoption and implementation of the ordinance. Thank you for your consideration on this item. That is the motion. Is there a second? And then we'll open it up for questions.
I will second, Jim.
Okay, Michael, that's seconds. Liz?
This is no comment on the letter, except for the item where it talks about how many have vouchers. That is a moving target. We've used the number 600 as far as how many people are actually searching for units. So I'm just wondering if we just say, with many individuals currently searching with housing vouchers or something to that effect.
Should we use a range?
I can get back with you with a better number, but that number I think is different than what we've been saying.
Okay, I thought that's what we had talked about. Mindy?
Excuse me. I think we need to finish the motion before I make a comment.
Oh, I think the motion's been made and seconded.
Okay.
Open for discussion.
I know little about this, but I did mention it to a friend of mine who is a landlord and was vehemently opposed to this kind of change in ordinance because it took away, her point was that it really impacted the control landlords had. So I'm just curious if anyone is on the commission that is a landlord, how they feel about this.
I don't know that we have any commission members who are landlords, but if you remember when this first topic first came up about 6 months ago or 7 months ago, we did have 4 or 5 people speak out against this type of legislation. The primary concern, and I'm going from memory here, but the biggest concern is that this is a financial contract that they're basically are going to be forcing on landlords to accept. And there's a number of things that go along with that. I think there were a lot of concerns at the time about timing and how quickly people could get into the units and inspections and how quickly they'd be paid. And HCD is my understanding is HCD has been working very hard to address a lot of those issues and make the program easier to work with. I don't know if I've stated all the issues, or I haven't, but there are, I can tell you, a lot of developers in the city who are opposed to this. Jay?
I think that there's a tremendous misconception about the power that this takes away from landlords. I mean, essentially, it's just saying that you can't just off the top say that you will not accept people who have a Section 8 voucher. You can still assess tenants and potential tenants like you always would. It's just like, you can't say, I will not accept any families with children, or I will not accept any people of this particular religion. I mean, you can still, as a landlord, it doesn't force anybody to take Section 8, which I think is a huge misnomer. So I think all of the kind of reaction of this taking away landlords' power to determine who lives in their units is tremendously overblown. So that's just my personal opinion, and the opinion of many people, I think, particularly from the fair housing world and others who support this and have heard a lot of the rhetoric from landlords and others that frankly doesn't hold up to scrutiny. So just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with Jay. I think a lot of this is for optics. I'm not sure that there's a lot of teeth here that's going to make an impact.
Yeah, and if I recall, when we had the discussion, we voted at that time in favor of it as a commission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so last meeting, when we discussed this topic, we as a group made a motion to send a letter to mayor and council. And so this was me following up on that motion and as my suggested language for the letter. So I guess outside of the number, and so Liz is going back to this 380. What's your suggestion on how to change that? Oh, you're on mute.
My apologies. You know, I would just say there's, you know, I would just say there's several hundred individuals currently unable to find a home. Just because, you know, and I'm not sure if Donald is on the call today, but we can, if you want a hard number, we can get that just to give you an accurate number.
I'm okay with several hundred. I think that's good enough. Mindy?
I would suggest making that a little bit stronger. There are currently, oh yeah, several hundred, many hundreds. Several just sounds like few, many hundreds.
Or just, there are hundreds.
How about upwards of 500?
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other suggested changes before we put it to vote? Okay, I'm gonna stop share so I can see the roll call here. Okay, Michael.
Aye.
Sharia.
Hi.
Liz. Oh, Liz is in here. Jay.
Aye.
Mindy.
Aye.
Lori.
Aye.
Joanna.
Aye.
Kinbry.
Hi.
Maggie.
Aye.
And Vicky.
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it. So Ernesto, I will save this and email it to you to distribute. Thank you, everyone.
Will do. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments on this before we move to the next agenda item? All right, HCD updates, Liz and Ann.
I will start first, and then if Ann, if you have anything you want to add, I want to talk a little bit about the upcoming mayor and council meetings. On September 13th, there'll be a presentation during the study session around solar empowerment for low-income households or homeowners. There'll be a presentation which Ward 3 Councilmember Dahl is really supportive of, and again, trying to find ways to help lower utility costs for people with limited incomes. On September 27th, there's going to be a discussion that the mayor asked for around serving unsheltered. It's going to cover a few different topics around housing, around efforts would encourage you to watch on September 27th. During the regular meeting, there'll be 2 items. One is the source of income that we just discussed. And second is impact fee waiver for one of the affordable housing projects called Cascade, which La Frontera is developing. And then there will be a PHA Board of Commissioners meeting on the 27th as well. One of the things we will be talking to mayor and council is around the wait list. And to give you all an update, because the last meeting we talked about, we're looking at opening the wait list. It's not happening fast enough for me, but we will still looking at maybe an October opening. I want to thank Jay for coordinating a meeting with him and the William Morris Justice Institute around our public notice and policies. And my next goal is to get with Vicky around the accessibility pieces and making sure we have all of our materials and online application achieve those goals. We are in the process of identifying agencies that can help us. So if you know of anyone that can help us with assisting people who want to apply, so whether there's organizations that have computer labs or other places where they can open up their site and provide some guidance and help. This waitlist will be a lottery, which means it will not matter if they apply on the first day or the last day. They will, everyone who applies will be put into a pool, and then the order of how people will be served will be random based on a lottery system. So I'll keep everyone up to date as we continue to move forward with that. If anyone has questions, let me know, but we will do at least a 30-day notice, a big campaign to get the word out before we actually open the waitlist process. We will also, I believe we'll keep the waitlist application process open for 21 days, 3 weeks. As an example, I was talking to my colleague at City of Mesa. They had over 20,000 applications in their time frame. So this is a pretty major effort, and we want to do it right. We want to make sure it's talking about equity and accessibility. We want to make sure everyone that needs to and needs to apply knows about this, and that it's easy, and that there's no barriers, whether someone has any challenges, you know, limited English, you know, maybe they're elderly, or other issues that would prevent them from being able to do this easily. So we're going to provide a lot of help and support. So if anyone wants to participate in that, please let me know. We also, I wanted to share some, I thought on the source of income, I'm hoping someone on the team from HCD can put the dashboard link. There is one of the efforts around the public meetings and getting having surveys around the source of income ordinance. We did get over almost 500 responses to our survey, and there's a way to see those responses and what the information we received. I think it's enlightening and helpful if you want to look at that. Finally, this is not related to HCD, but it is important for this commission to be aware, but more importantly, in attendance. September 12th, the Housing Supply Study Committee is coming to the city of Tucson. If you're not aware, there's the state legislature convened a study committee around the issue of zoning and affordable housing. And so it's a bipartisan committee. They've met at least 3 times, maybe 4, and they are doing a road trip. So they're going first to Flagstaff, then to Tucson on September 12th from 1 to 3 p.m. Earlier, I was putting in the information and hit enter too quickly, but it's up above in the chat around if you want more information, but there's also links. So if you can't attend and it's at the council chambers, if you can't attend, it is being streamed. So all the meetings, you can go back and see the past meetings, and all their public meetings are being streamed and recorded. So wanted to make sure you're all aware, and the more we can get in attendance, I think would be really great.
So Liz, a real quick question for you on that. So I am planning to attend that. I'm not sure how to prepare for it. I mean, should we be prepared to talk? How should we prepare for that meeting?
I think that's a great question. It would, so because a lot of it is around what are the issues around increasing the units in the state, like how do we, and so some of it is the way it was kicked off, and I'm actually gonna ask if Joanna wants to add anything, because I know Joanna's very much tracking this, and Joan Service, who you've all met, she serves, who's the CEO for Arizona Coalition on Housing. She serves on the committee, but there's a lot, they're talking a lot about planning and zoning, but they're also talking about what are the barriers for people to have housing. So for instance, one of the committees, they talked about using VASH vouchers and other types of assistance, and what are the barriers. Some of it is from the development community. What makes it hard to develop housing, especially affordable housing, has its own challenges. So if you want to speak to that, so what's the message you want them, because out of this committee they will be developing potential legislation, and so that thinking about what kind of legislation do you think is critical, and also just as far as from the commission point of view, what we've talked a lot about the issues that are of importance, and you could highlight those things that are on the radar or on the work that the commission is doing.
Great, thank you.
That's my update. Anne, would you add anything?
No, I think you covered it all. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions for HCD? Okay, so agenda item number 8 is next steps. Our next meeting is October 6th. All subcommittees, please meet before then. I have a request. I don't know if it's possible to do this, but there's some great links that have been posted in the chat. Is it possible to take all of those and put them into our meeting minutes so that we can reference the links later?
Yes,
Great
Okay.
idea.
will do. Thank you.
Jay?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, Jim. There's a ton of great stuff there. And one of the things that I would like to put on our agenda or whatever for next steps is I really think that we need to have a repository, whether it's on the commission's website or a separate drive where we're collecting resources that we're talking about. There's nowhere where we're collecting reports and other data to inform the work that we're doing. I think that's a critical piece that we need to include, and it'd be very, very easy, I think, overall. So I would definitely recommend that we do that so that we can have building a common knowledge base that we're working from.
I agree with you. I've been using the website as all documentation that's been presented should be listed on the website. But like these links and things like that are not. So
I think, we're there. I think a lot of us, at least, between meetings, come across studies and reports and things we want to share, and they kind of go into the either as opposed to, landing somewhere that we can all refer to things. So, between meetings, if we could, share stuff as well, that would be great.
So is there a way we can do that? Is it would it be like a Google Drive or something like that?
Jim, I'll talk with Rachel and see what would be the best option, and we'll pass that by you and Mike and get your thoughts on that. But we'll come up with something. Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
But thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jim.
Vicky?
I just wanted to agree with Jay, but to say I'm not sure the website is the place for it. I don't find it easy to find information there. To find past agendas or minutes, it requires a lot of scrolling. So I just would, I'm glad Ernesto said you'll investigate it and look for other options. I think if we can find something that's easier to access the information and navigate, that would be great.
Will do. Thank you, Vicky, and I'll consult with you as well. Thank you.
Okay, any other thoughts on future agenda items? Okay, well then we will adjourn. It is 5:54. Thank you, everyone. Oh, Mindy?
Yeah, I don't know if it would be appropriate for this committee or not. I'm hoping to get out into community and talk about how our homelessness issue is, excuse me, violation of other people's civil rights. And why I think that vulnerable adults with serious mental illnesses and substance use disorders make up a significant, and veterans make up a significant portion of individuals living homelessly without homes. And I would like to, I need to talk about that widely with community and how we ended up here, how we tolerate that as a society. I was just in LA not too long ago, and that just put a fire in my belly. And I don't know if that becomes a conversation with this commission or just something that I will be doing on my own.
So Mindy, let's discuss that offline and figure out, you know, how we want to present that and what are the desired goals.
Thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
Sure. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions before we adjourn? Okay, it's now 5:55 and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jim.